Engines roared beneath a veil of grey smoke, and the silence before battle felt heavier than steel. Russian mechanized columns began to push forward as their pride. T-90M tanks, armored vehicles and APCs are rolling toward the Ukrainian defensive line. Their objective, to smash through, to crush, to turn these fields into a road of conquest. But above them, Ukrainian reconnaissance UAVs quietly recorded every movement. The ground they advanced into was not glory, it was a staged deception, sown with mines and watched by silent eyes in the sky. In this fight, the power of steel would meet the intelligence of adaptation, and only one side would rise from the ashes. The mist had not yet lifted. From that hazy screen, the silhouettes of Russian tanks appeared anquil, black, immense, moving like a single colossal organism. Each T-90M caught the morning dew, its gun barrel raised like a god's finger pointing at fate. Commanders spoke softly over radios, calm voices braided with pride. They believed the plan was flawless: overwhelm, seize, annihilate. But above them, invisible wings turned and circled. Ukraine's UAVs, small, silent, unblinking recorded every motion. To machines it was only data, but to the soldiers watching through screens, it was the line between life and oblivion. When the lead tank crossed the surveillance boundary, coordinates were transmitted. Seconds later, the sky thundered. A swarm of kamikaze drones dove out of the clouds, tearing the mist like meteorites. The first strike hit the lead tanker. The turret exploded, a blinding white-red flame bursting forth. Then, the second, the third, until the entire column was submerged in a rising sea of fire. Metal screamed, smoke spiraled into the dawn, and the deck's field became a furnace of chaos. Smoke thickened over the plain, heavy and mute. Russian command channels filled with chaos, shouted coordinates, frantic calls for air support, desperate medevac requests. But Moscow's order was clear: continue the attack. So, the armored column surged on, engines wailing as if protesting its fate. The first vehicle rolled over the charred wreck of a destroyed tank. Then, a thunderous blast, an anti-tank mine buried beneath the soil, detonated. The single explosion hurled flames skyward, shrapnel raining down like a deadly storm. Fragments tore through the infantry following behind, cutting through smoke and shrieks. Ukrainian commanders watched the drone feeds, faces lit by the reflected flames on the burning field. No expression, only focus. Each strike was not chaos, but a composed score, every blast a note in a symphony of resistance. One Russian APC managed to get through the minefield, disgorged troops who spilled into the trenches. They fought savagely, seizing bunkers and gun emplacements amid choking smoke and cordite. But the ground betrayed them again. Another blast, another eruption of fire. The vehicle vanished in seconds. No one survived. Above, drones orbited, their cameras cold and unblinking. At 07:10, the remaining Russian infantry surged forward through the smoke toward the Ukrainian line. But ahead of them was not an empty field, but a labyrinth of trenches, where soldiers had waited all night. Gunfire cracked. Grenades flashed. And in that maze of earth and blood, modern war met its oldest truth: the main fighting for every breath. When the last Russian fighters fell silent, the battlefield sank into an eerie stillness. Only the small, sibilant pops of burning metal and the faint hum of drones remained. Then, from a distant horizon, another sound rolled in, a deep, rhythmic, relentless artillery. The first rounds fell on the western edge of the Ukrainian line. Earth erupted, embossed and smoke braided together. Seconds later, a second barrage, closer, more precise. Shells rained like punishment, ripping trenches apart, burying mud and memory. But Ukraine had anticipated this. In command bunkers, officers watched live UAV feeds. Each Russian battery was fixed the moment it fired. Coordinates locked. Counter-battery fire launched. Within minutes, Ukrainian artillery answered with mathematics. Sharp accuracy. Each incoming round met a reply. On distant ridgelines, where Russian guns had roared, only black columns of smoke now rose, each a silenced battery. Then the whine of engines drew nearer. A-52 attack helicopters swept low, rotors shredding the mist. Guided missiles streaked down, carving bright trails through the air. But the defenders were prepared. From ruined sheds and tree lines, low-altitude UAVs took off small, fast, armed with man-portable air defense missiles and electronic jammers. They rushed like a swarm of angry hornets. The first Kharkiv-2 detonated mid-air, fragments falling like stars. Another was hit seconds later, spinning down into the forest with a horrific scream. The remaining aircraft dropped flares and withdrew into the fog. For the Russian pilots, the ground below ceased to be territory and became a graveyard. By mid-morning, the skyline was ablaze. Black smoke pillars spiraled up like pillars to the sky, twisting against a silvered cloud. Yet, Russian command still refused to call it off. A new order crackled through the radios: commit reserves. Launch a second wave of armor. 5 more armored vehicles roared forward, weaving to evade drone fire. A stray missile missed. The next did not. An FPV drone dived from above, camera locking onto the lead vehicle. A flash, a wrenching sound of metal tearing the air, then only dust and flame. The rest surged on into fields already sown with mines. Each explosion marked the cadence of a heartbeat. 1, 2, 3 fires blossomed across the ground. The convoy burned where it stood. Only blackened husks remained amid the walls of flame. Ukrainian gunners kept their cool, each shot deliberate, using guided munitions to complete what the UAVs had begun. In under 10 minutes, the assault was over. Twisted wreckage strewn for hundreds of meters. For the survivors, there was no formation left to rally to. Some fled toward the woods, but the forest had become a hunting ground. Drones circled among the branches, striking holes. They exploded like metallic hawks. While others crawled in ditches, dropping their weapons, uniforms smeared with oil and ash. They were no longer soldiers, just people lost in hell. Yet the orders still echoed over the radio: advance. One word had lost its meaning. The Ukrainian line held. Every soldier knew his position, every weapon its purpose. From afar, a voice crackled through the nets, calm and steady: hold. Every meter we hold is another heartbeat of freedom. Those words carried farther than any shell. By noon, the sky over Athol had lost its blue. It was a shuddering grey, heavy with the echo of engines from afar. Dominion changed tactics. If steel on the ground could not win, they would use fire from the sky. From northern airfields, squadrons took off, thin silhouettes of destruction, escorted by helicopters and combat drones. Their mission was simple: erase the trenches, break the defender's spirit, crush Athol's will before the next wave of armor. But Athol was ready. Along the defensive line, a new system awoke. A network of low-altitude UAVs, invisible to radar, armed with light missiles and electronic warfare gear. When Dominion's strike force entered the envelope, that net flared to life. Small motors whined like bees. Red aiming reticles locked on. In seconds, the sky became a contest between speed and silence. The first helicopter swung to avoid the threat. Too late. A missile slammed into it, tearing the airframe into an orange blossom of fire and black smoke. Another followed, then another. Dominion's formation broke, scattering into the clouds. For the first time, pilots felt the weight of uncertainty, a fear of an unseen enemy. Below, counter-battery fire began. Athol's artillery, guided by UAV reconnaissance, hunted down enemy launchers hidden miles away. Each salvo answered another salvo, tracing luminous paths through the smoke. Black smoke rose where Dominion's launch positions burned. There was no acceleration in the air, only the steady pulse of endurance. When the last guns fell silent, the quiet that followed felt heavier than the fighting. On the shattered front, the earth exhaled smoke. Scorched soil still trembled. Soldiers sat motionless in trenches, faces caked with soot, eyes reflecting the pallid light of a sky that had forgotten blue. They hadn't spoken in hours. Only the wind moved across helmets and broken rifles. From afar, a voice on the radio spoke, distant yet calm. "You held the line. You did not fall." Those words were fragile, but weighted as salvation. Private Lior looked at the small iron cross at his throat, its metal dusted with ash. He had stopped counting hours long ago. All he could remember was breathing his own, and those still beside him. He thought of home, of a quiet river, of his mother lighting a candle each morning. Faith, he realized, was not a shouted prayer from the sky. It was the whisper that said, "Endure," when every other sound had gone. Above, a drone passed through the clouds, its wing reflecting the sunset, a reminder that in an age of machines, the human spirit still refused to bow. When night returned, the earth slept beneath a silvered mist. The fires had died out, but the air still trembled with what remained. The smell of ash, and the quiet beating of hearts that had not stopped. On the far horizon, new days waited, not pristine, not whole, but still alive. And perhaps that was enough. Every generation meets a storm that tests the human soul. It washes away illusions and leaves one truth. Our greatest strength has never been weapons or fortifications, but the fragile courage to hope again. Machines may map the skies, but it is faith that lights the dawn. As long as a single voice prays for peace, the world remembers how to begin again. October 2025. Dex region, Eastern Ukraine. The dawn peeled back like a wounded eye opening over scarred land.